Well, joining me now is the Israeli government spokesperson, David Mencer. Thank you for speaking to us. You will have heard that interview with Francesca Albanese there describing Gaza as being unfit for human life. Is she incorrect?
So thank you for having me on, Gillian. Look, firstly, Francesca Albanese has a record as long as your arm, Gillian, as you pointed out, on Jew hatred. And what you heard tonight from her was the latest example, a sophisticated Jew hater, I would call her, but a Jew hater nonetheless. Danny Danon, our UN ambassador, has called for her resignation. Our ambassador has called for her resignation because of propagating baseless accusations. He called her one of the most anti-Semitic figures in modern history, particularly on this false claim of genocide. You correctly identified Linda Thomas Greenfield, the US ambassador. She said that she was unfit for the role. The governments of France and Germany have both condemned Albanese. Even France called her scandalous. Germany called her appalling. She's even accused David Lammy, your own David Lammy, of being a genocide supporter. And also in the Congress in the US, both sides of the House have cancelled their visit to Congress. Why? Because she is constantly accusing Israel of genocide, which actually weaponizes the Holocaust terminology. It equates Jews with the victims of genocide with their perpetrators. This is a moral inversion. It perpetuates anti-Semitic tropes, calling Jews as oppressors, committing the very crimes once inflicted on us.
If we move away from the claim of genocide, on the question of Gaza being unfit for human life, what is your comment to that?
Well, I'll tell you what my comments are very, very clearly. This was a war which was perpetrated upon us. It was Hamas which instigated this war. When they set out on their journey to massacre Jews, the worst day of Jew killing in history since the Holocaust, they knew what they were doing. They knew that it would elicit a response. And what they did was a double war crime. They hid themselves amongst civilians. They still do. And they fire at us from those civilian places, at our civilians. So it's a double war crime. And that's why it is Hamas that is responsible for this war. And Israel has a very clear objective to ensure that we get our hostages home, 101 of them, still being held by Hamas. Some of them are dead, unfortunately, but many are still alive. And you repeated the Prime Minister's plea there that, you know, to Hamas, if any Hamas are watching right now, let our hostages go, surrender, and firstly, you'll be allowed to leave with your family, but also you'll get $5 million. But ultimately, if Hamas surrender, this war is over right now. I never heard once from Francesca Albanese a call for Hamas to surrender. That would be the decent thing to do.
David Mencer, I'm going to ask you directly if you believe that Gaza is fit for human life in the state that it is in now. Is it fit for human life?
The only way it is unfit for human life is what Hamas have done to it. Hamas could look like Monaco right now. It could look like Singapore without the amount of international money which has been poured into it. Unfortunately, that money has been sunk into the terrorist network, to underground tunnels, to ways to fight Israel, to destroy Israel. That is the definition, the dictionary definition of genocide. They wish to wipe us off the face of the earth. Iran are their backers. And of course, they've tried to do it, and if they were given the chance, they'd get the chance. They would try to do it again. The people responsible for the war in Gaza are Hamas. We're taking them apart. There's about 24 battalions. We've shattered about 23 of them. The remnants have regrouped in the north. We're taking them apart as well. But ultimately, Gazans are not going anywhere, and nor are Israel. So ultimately, Gazans will be able to live there in peace, but only with the leadership that wants to build their own future rather than to destroy my country.
And is the bombardment of northern Gaza, is that proportionate?
So there's no bombardment of northern Gaza. There is an effort to get civilians out of harm's way. That's precisely what we've done. We warn civilians in advance of our military action. No one says it's pleasant for civilians to have to move again, but Hamas are trying to get them to stay. And we're going after the Hamas terrorists in a targeted way. Now, again, this was not a war we wanted, but this is the way Hamas wanted to fight us. So every single casualty, civilian or otherwise, civilian deaths are a catastrophe, but every single casualty must fall at the feet squarely of Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organisation.
I want to ask you, though, is there any safe place within Gaza? Is there any safe place for people to go?
Yes, there is. The Al Mawasi safe humanitarian zone has been designated by the Israeli army as the place for civilians to go to. Again, no one says this is a pleasant experience, but we've got to do a job to defeat Hamas, to free Gazans from Hamas. When Gazans go to those humanitarian zones, they'll be able to get shelter, water, food, medical attention. Again, it's not a pleasant situation, but Hamas initiated this war. We're defeating Hamas, and then Gazans will be able to go home to build a better future for their kids, not with a mind to destroy this country.
Just want to talk about the humanitarian aid, and the UN are warning that the amount of aid getting into Gaza is at its lowest level in a year, and that it can't distribute aid if Israel's military operations mean it's too dangerous. They can't get the aid to the people who need it.
So, unfortunately, that's just an excuse, because the IPC, part of the UN, have always been wrong when it comes to the aid going into Gaza. There's over 1 million tons of aid which has gone into Gaza. It's 80% more food which has gone into Gaza than before this war. What we saw over the last 24 hours was Hamas and criminals looting the aid, looting it from UNRWA's trucks. UNRWA used to give it to Hamas. Now Hamas are looting it from the UNRWA trucks. But we are pushing more aid in there every day. And the Israeli government has made this absolutely clear. If international donor countries wish to send aid in, we will get it in. Right now, Gillian, you should know there are around 900 trucks worth of aid inside Gaza. They've been through the Israeli security check, but it's the inefficiency of the United Nations, once again, who are unable to get it about.
Just want to quickly come back on that. We are running out of time, but the UN Aid Coordination Office has said that in the last 2 days alone, 6 attempts to deliver life-saving assistance to besieged areas in the north of Gaza were completely blocked.
So that is incorrect again. I can tell you the facts. You know, the facts don't lie. These aren't opinions. 50 trucks of aid went in today into northern Gaza. I spoke about it today at our daily press conference. 50 of those trucks went in. We're pushing that aid in, particularly to northern Gaza, because Hamas are keeping some of those civilians as a human shield inside northern Gaza. We've asked them to leave, but Hamas is stopping them. So we're getting the aid to them while at the same time fighting Hamas. But we're close. The Prime Minister's talked about this being the beginning of the end of Hamas. We want a future without Hamas, which is a better future for Gazans and ultimately for Israelis as well.
David Mencer, thank you very much for speaking to us, Israeli government
Good to be with you. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Julian.